The wind coming off the Atlantic carried the kind of chill that slipped beneath clothing and touched something deeper, something old. Elena Vargas stepped out of her dented pickup and onto the cracked, shell-covered drive, staring at the weather-beaten mansion that had just, against all logic, become hers. The place loomed over the shoreline like the skeletal remnant of a forgotten empire. Salt-scored walls, sun-bleached tiles, windows sealed behind warped boards. She had bought it with the last money she owned, money that should have gone toward rent and groceries, not a reckless auction bid. Yet standing here with the ocean's roar echoing between dunes and abandoned properties, she felt something she hadn't tasted in years: possibility. Elena, 42 and exhausted from a lifetime of setbacks, ran her hand through her wind-tangled hair, whispering to the house the same promise she'd whispered to her daughter for years. "I'll fix this. I'll fix everything." She was a contractor's daughter born with steady hands and stubborn hope, but the world had been unkind, chipping away at her confidence piece by piece. Now she faced this deteriorating beast of a house alone, the weight of unpaid bills and her daughter's future pressing hard on her tired shoulders. But as the surf thundered against the seawall, she felt her father's voice again, steady, reassuring. "Old structures don't scare people with courage, Mija. They reveal them." And with that, she stepped across the threshold into the dim silence, unaware that the house held secrets that would alter the course of her life. Inside, the air was thick with abandonment, carrying the faint metallic scent of rust and the deeper, older smell of water trapped behind walls. Elena's boots echoed across marble veined like cracked ice, a haunting reminder of what this mansion once was: grand, extravagant, untouchable. Dust covered everything like a second skin. Furniture draped in tattered sheets stood as ghostly silhouettes watching her, and the chandelier overhead swayed gently, stirred by a draft that came from nowhere. Her flashlight beam brushed across ornate molding, peeling wallpaper, and photographs left behind, as though someone had intended to return but never did. She brushed her thumb over a frame. The image long faded, but something about the stiff jawlines and dark suits bothered her, lingering like a shadow behind her thoughts. Elena pushed deeper into the house, tracing the layout the way her father once taught her, feeling the rhythm of a structure, sensing where additions, lies, or secrets lived inside the bones. And then she felt it, a wall that didn't belong. The plaster was too new, the dimensions slightly off, the echoes wrong when she tapped her knuckles along its surface. Her breath caught. Someone had hidden something here, not old renovation work, not a faulty patch job, a deliberate concealment. A block in the house's natural pulse. Her flashlight trembled slightly as she leaned in, whispering to no one, "What were you hiding?" The house swallowed her words whole. The next hour blurred into a quiet frenzy. Elena returned to her truck for her father's toolbox, a relic he'd carried through every job, every storm season, every period when life looked impossible. She ran her palm over his initials carved into the metal and felt steadier. Back inside, she worked methodically, wedging her pry bar into the seam of the suspicious wall. Plaster cracked with a soft gasp, layers peeling away like the shedding of a long-held lie. Bit by bit, the hidden truth revealed itself. Behind the falsified surface stood a massive steel vault door, industrial and unapologetically out of place inside a home. Its cold presence seemed to exhale a chill, as though it still remembered the hands that spun its dial and the secrets it kept from prying eyes. Elena's pulse quickened. She had no combination, no blueprint for this kind of barrier. But then she noticed the vent above, an access point no wider than her shoulders but perfectly aligned with the space beyond the door. Her father used to say that solutions rarely announce themselves. They whisper. With determination stitched into her spine, she dragged a chair beneath the vent and began unscrewing the rusted grate, metal groaning softly. When it finally released, she inhaled deeply, tasting salt and dust, then hauled herself upward, elbows scraping as she forced her body through the claustrophobic shaft. Inch by inch, she crawled toward whatever truth waited on the other side, unaware that her life was about to divide into before and after. She dropped into the vault with a dull thud, knees bending to absorb the shock as her flashlight beam swept across the concrete floor. For a heartbeat, she thought the dust was playing tricks on her. Then comprehension washed over her like a cold wave. Bundles of cash, wrapped, labeled, stacked with precision, filled the room like silent monuments. Gold bars glimmered from open crates, their surfaces catching the light in thick honeyed flashes. Velvet pouches spilled gemstones of impossible clarity, each one winking with dangerous beauty. Elena's breath thinned, her chest tightening. This wasn't forgotten wealth. This was intentional secrecy, a treasure that belonged to someone who had expected a future, who had intended to come back for it. And whoever that was, they were not the sort who misplaced fortunes. She stepped carefully around the stacks, feeling as though she were trespassing on a grave. Pages of ledgers lay open on a metal table, handwritten in meticulous columns. She couldn't understand all the abbreviations, but the pattern was unmistakable. This money had not been earned through anything clean. Trembling, she lifted a gold bar. It seemed heavier than its weight suggested, as if it carried the burden of every life touched by the empire that produced it. Her father had warned her about houses that remembered their owners. This one, this vault, remembered too much. Alina's instinct urged her to run, but something rooted her to the spot, a mixture of dread, awe, and the crushing realization that her life had just become dangerously complicated. She photographed everything with shaky hands, documenting every crate, every bundle, every ledger page. But as she turned to re-enter the ventilation shaft, the muffled sound of footsteps echoed above. Not the wandering of a curious trespasser, but slow, confident strides, steps that moved with intention. Her throat tightened. Whoever was up there knew exactly where they were going. A chair scraped across the floor. Then the faint sound of plaster shifting. Someone was uncovering the false wall. She shut off her light, pressing herself against the cold concrete, willing her heartbeat to silence. A flashlight beam pierced the vent. A man's voice followed, steady, seasoned, carrying the weight of an old-world accent. "I know you're down there." Alina froze. "You're the one who bought the house," the voice continued. "I've been waiting for you." Every instinct screamed at her to stay hidden, but the man spoke again, calmer, more measured. 5 minutes, I just want to talk." He said the one thing that shattered her resolve, her daughter's name. Panic gripped her. This stranger knew far too much. And yet, in the tension of his voice, she sensed something unexpected. Not the hunger of a man hunting wealth, but the regret of someone who'd already lost everything that mattered. When Alina climbed out of the shaft, she found a man in his late 50s standing amid broken plaster, his posture weary rather than threatening. Vincent Morty, once part of a crime dynasty that terrified coastal towns from Miami to New Orleans, now looked like a man carrying the ashes of his own past. His gaze lingered on the concealed vault door with a mixture of sorrow and disdain. "My father built that cage," he said quietly, but it became his coffin long before he died. His words slipped into the air like confessions he'd held for decades. Alina kept distance between them, fists tight, but Vincent raised his hands gently. "I'm not here to take it," he said. "I'm here because my brother is coming, and he'll burn through anyone in his way." He laid out her choices with brutal honesty. Surrender everything and hope for mercy, call the authorities and risk retaliation, or disappear with only what she needed to survive. None were clean. None were safe, but he spoke of his own daughter, the one he'd watched from afar for years, and the cost of staying tethered to a legacy soaked in blood. "Protecting your child," he murmured, "is worth more than any empire." When he finally stepped back into the hallway's shadows, Alina felt a hollow ache in her chest. This wasn't just a house with a vault. It was the epicenter of a storm she had accidentally awakened. Fear became her constant companion in the days that followed. Alina moved her daughter into a small roadside motel under an assumed name, the neon sign flickering like a nervous heartbeat outside their window. A retired FBI agent named Thomas, sharp-eyed and steady-voiced, entered her life in a twist of fate she hadn't expected. He recognized the danger immediately, the signatures of intimidation etched into the threats she received. "This family survives through fear," he said, reviewing the photographs someone had taken of her daughter. "But fear only wins if you let it corner you." With his guidance, she learned the mechanics of caution, how to spot a tail, how to lose one, how to walk into a room already knowing where every exit was. He examined the vault's contents with a professional detachment she envied, explaining where the wealth had come from and how many lives had been shattered along its accumulation. When she asked what she should do, he spread out evidence across the motel table, documents, ledgers, the handwritten letter from the dynasty's patriarch, and looked at her with quiet gravity. "You have something powerful," he said. "Not the money, the truth. Use it correctly and you can break their hold forever." But using the truth meant exposing herself. It meant confronting a legacy that didn't forgive and never forgot. The final decision pressed into Alina's spirit like a weight. She spent sleepless nights tracing the choice before her, the same way she once traced the beams of her father's workshop to understand how a structure carried its load. She could run with a fraction of the wealth and forever hide. She could give it all to men who had already proven themselves merciless. Or she could step into the open, risk everything, and speak aloud the truth